Whoa, that's always such a weird transition. Hello, everyone. We are live. I cannot believe it. We are live with the 13th annual techsytalk Global. This is just crazy. We've been working for months and months on this, and it does not even feel real that we are live. But I see all of you watching. We are streaming this on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. So wherever you're watching, please drop it in the comments. Wherever you're watching, we can see it. So drop in the comments who you are, where you're watching from. Use this as an opportunity to start networking with each other. We have amazing content lined up over the next few days and lots of things to tell you. And we're going to dive right in. I do want to share a few quick little housekeeping notes. First of all, my name is Liz Caruso. I'm the founder of techsytalk, and I get the very unique opportunity to really pull together some of the brightest minds in the events industry and even some officially out of the events industry to inspire you, to get you thinking. And I want you to take a moment just to think about why you decided to click on this stream right now, why you are here. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. If you're watching on Facebook, make sure you go to streamyard.com/Facebook. There's just a little checkbox that will let us see your picture and your name. You have to give us permission to do that. Otherwise, you're going to show up as random Facebook user. So make sure you do that. I do see Jennifer is here from Mississippi. We have someone from Calgary. We have lots of Facebook users. So make sure you go to streamyard.com/Facebook. I see lots of great people on here already. So good morning. Lots of Facebook users from our techsytalk community, which we will talk more about. One of our speakers is already on. So hello to all of you. We do have that global audience already. So glad to have you here. We have much to say, but let me kick this off with an energy that I could never compete with. I wanted to make sure that Ramon Ray, one of our dear friends, one of our clients, one of our partners, gets a chance to address all of you. He is a renowned world speaker. He has built and sold multiple brands. He has an energy level that, again, is unparalleled. And he's been involved in events for so many years. So as we're kicking off this event with the theme of experience, I couldn't think of anybody better. So let me just bring on Ramon. Ramon, good morning.
Hey, Liz, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great. How are you?
Liz, I feel great. It's great to be here. Good to see you after a while. You and I interact quite a bit on all the platforms, but
Yes.
good to see you. You look fantastic, and all the best to your family. And hello to the techsytalk global audience. Thanks for having me, Liz.
Thank you for coming. As I said, you have been steeped in events for many years. I don't know, I don't know if you consider yourself part of the events industry, but I think you are. And so I was hoping that you could kick us off this morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time people are watching, by talking about this idea of attendee experience and why we should be so obsessed with it, what you've seen over your years of experience. And I'm going to leave it to you if that sounds good.
I appreciate that. And I think you said, Liz, I have 15 minutes, or was it 3 hours?
Yes.
How long did you say?
Anywhere in between there, but we have some great speakers lined up.
How about 15? I think I'll cut it down from 50 to 3 hours to 15.
Okay.
But no, Liz, thanks for being here. I must say, everybody, that when I have big events, when my clients come to me, I serve some large tech brands and others. And hey, Marlis Arnold, good to see you too, dear. And hey, Ashley, when my clients come to me, say, Ramon, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do big events? I call Liz Caruso. So I am not an events producer in the aspect of people hiring me, but I'm an event producer for my own events that I dream up and build, and then work with amazing talent like Liz and this great community, all of you, to do that. So I'm honored to be here. I'll be done in about 10 minutes or so. Just really excited to kick this off and serve you all. So again, welcome to techsytalk Global. As Liz said, my name is Ramon Ray. I've started 5 small companies, sold 3 of them, authored several books, about 5, and I speak all over the world. And I do 2 different things. I speak, that's for sure. So I'm a keynote speaker, usually about some business topic, but then I'm also an event host, which leads to experience, and I'll give some points as well. So those 2 different things I do, and it's great to do that. Possibly I've been on some of your stages. So with that, a few key points I wanted to talk about experience, about events and growing and helping to give the attendees an amazing experience. I'm excited to have Phil, Sean, and others come up in the next few minutes and hours over the next few days as well. So I think Maya Angelou said it best. It's not so much what you say to people, but it's how you make them feel. That's so important. How do we make people feel at our events? And I know most of you, all of you here are professionals, and so most of you probably know this, but I think today and the time we have here will be a great reminder of what does that really mean? Good to see you, Phil, too. What does that really mean? And so I think experience counts. Now, is that the most important part of an event? I don't know. There's so many things that are important, right? You have to have the good draw, you have to have a good agenda, you have to pay for the event somehow with sponsors and ticket sales. But I must say, event experience is right there at the top. I could think of some of the best events that I've been to, some of the best events that I've been to. And do you know sometimes where it started? Even as my car pulled into the parking lot, even as I opened up the door of the hotel or the loft or the space, the outdoor area, right before I even got into the main event, you could feel the vibration. You could feel the excitement. You could feel something's going on here. And that makes you want to come back again and again and again and attend said event. So, my message, my thought, my challenge to my brothers and sisters in the event industry, and I do consider myself part of the event industry, is what is the kind of experience that we can make for our clients or for the end user, for the attendees, which is most important, whether you have a big budget or a smaller budget. And as Liz said, just a side point about having consider myself a part of the industry. Yeah, I do. Because even though I'm not the direct event production, like for example, Liz is, even though I may not be the event producer, kind of to a degree, like Phil Mershon is, but as a speaker or as an event host, especially at bigger events. I was just at a big event with Gary Vaynerchuk and Neil Patel in Las Vegas. I'll be going to Houston next week. Even in those times, I work hand in hand with the event team to produce a great experience. So, one, I think something sounds small, but one thing that I notice in some hotels, I won't mention brand names in case we have sponsors or others as that, but there's one well known hotel. When you walk into that hotel, it smells nice. So I wonder, my brothers and sisters in the event space, what can you do to have a great experience? Even with the smell. And by the way, if you do that already, if you sometimes get into some smells and scents, put the word smell into one of the chats on whichever platform. I'm curious who uses the power of smell as part of the experience. But a great smell that can matter. Now, not too overwhelming, of course, and I'm not a smell expert, but I can think of some of my best events when I walk in the elevator, taking a ride on the escalator, walking on the carpeted floor. I was like, ooh, this smells good. Another thing I think that's important is the aspect of smiles. Listen, training your staff, training your team. If they see our logo from the most junior event staff to the big dog at the event, what's the smile? And yes, as Marlis says, multi-sensory is always a great strategy. Is everyone wearing a smile? Is everyone looking like they're excited? How can you expect an attendee to be excited about your event if you're not excited? Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to Techsy Talk Global. Liz is absolutely amazing. Ugh. You're going to have a good time today, and I'm so glad you're here. Can you believe having an event like that? And it can't be fake. You have to really be excited. But I think you get my point. And that's the staff. That's you. That's everybody who's involved with that experience. Are they wearing a smile? Does their voice sound like a smile? Are they ready to serve the customer? I think another thing that goes far, especially as you're doing a great experience for the speakers, whether you're paying your speakers a lot, paying them little, the budget side is irrelevant on this, but showing appreciation to the speaking staff, to the production staff, and even what can you do for the attendees? Now, tchotchkes, of course, are an entire industry, and your clients will turn to you for help in that. And I'm sure we have a mix of people here who are the event planners, people who are service the event industry, like myself, and those of you who are the end user client, producing your own events, hiring some people here on this platform. But when you think about the gifting experience, I can look behind me. Wow, I can pull out so many things I've gotten at events, amazing gifts I can think of that made me think, wow, somebody put thought in this. And again, Chloe, hey, Chloe, what's up? As Chloe says, whether it's the thought speakers and others that you want to say thank you, or even just quote unquote the attendees, giving them something memorable, something they'll think about. I work with one large tech brand, and they're based in the South. Their headquarters is in Asia, but they have a Southern presence. And every time they come with something harkening back to South in America, meaning a belt buckle or, hot sauce or something like that. So those things mean a lot. And I remember their events. The colors and visuals of your event is so important. And again, it's something that if not there, you wonder, will people notice? And maybe if you don't have a budget, even it's something as simple as a flower. But as you're doing big scale events, as you're looking to 2023, those of you who are just starting out, and of course, those of you who are experienced know it, definitely. I love from where Sean says, we must serve and appreciate speakers, staff, volunteers, sponsors, and vendors, and much attendees. Absolutely, Phil. Amen to that. So as you're thinking of the colors and the pop and the sizzle, this is absolutely important. Even, hey, the bathrooms. Do you have budget to put some decals in the bathroom? Is that brand, is that visibility? Is it something that as people coming in, not only are they smelling it, but they're seeing it. It looks baller. And can I say one thing here? I hope I don't offend anybody. If I offend you, then Liz will come back on. She'll be like, Ramon, cut it. You got to stop. So let's get ready to hit the stop button. But as you put your colors and visuals together, either do it right or don't do it at all. And I know most of you are doing it right. But once in a while you go to an event and it feels like they got a cardboard box saying bathrooms this way or welcome. Unless that's part of the design, make it look baller, make it look good. And you don't have to spend a lot of money per se to have things look good. I encourage you to consider it, raise your budget, work with your sponsors, get your pricing for your tickets. So we want to do the best we can. But I respect everybody. I'm sure this platform is at different stages. But I was at an event yesterday with a big client of mine in New York City. They were at the 101st floor of Hudson Yards. They spent quite a bit of money at that event. So there's budgets around for sure. You just got to find them. But the event looked first class, I must say. The food was good. They had one of those fancy robots that can flip and do stuff. One of those robots there, a violinist there. The food was great. The staff, you could see the staff were well appointed. They were looking really good. And even the audio video, they didn't have one of the old school projectors. They had like a display wall with the video integrated, something really cool like that. It looked really first class. So my point is, as you're thinking of the design and the visuals and things of that nature, you want to really pay attention to that. Most of you don't have a problem with this, but to talking about visual design, trash is something that can be a big turnoff for many attendees. So make sure you're well staffed in your events who can take care of it for sure. And welcome from St. Augustine, Florida. Welcome, Lori. Your staff, I've mentioned that before, but I do want to touch on this as well. The staff you hire are really, really important to the success of your event. And as we're talking about now, to the experience. It's everything. I've done a lot of events over the year. One of my first events, I dreamed of it in 2005. My first event I did in 2006, my first big event, bringing hundreds of people together. So I've done a lot of events. And as an event host, I've been on probably stages of some of you hosting your events and or keynoting your events. And I must say, the staff you hire matters. I've done stuff like, you know what? Let me just try to bring my uncle, my cousin, and my Aunt Mary. I'm not going to call Liz right now. And I got cousin and Aunt Mary results. They're not professionals. Every time I call upon Liz, or you may have the people you call upon, it's a baller event, a baller experience, because they're first-class professionals. So the staff you use is so very important. And this is one of my final points here as I get ready to turn the microphone back over to the amazing techsytalk team, is the host you have. And I'm not saying that just because of me, but in my years of experience being, yes, a keynote speaker and or an event host, let me give you some tips on that. Those are two different disciplines. Just because someone's your chief executive or the big dog at your company does not mean they're a great event host. And just because they're a great keynote speaker does not make them an event host. So one thing I found about the role of an event host, as I am, an event host can help fill in the holes and fill in the water with your team. Maybe you have a CEO that's not a great speaker. You know what? That's okay. They built a billion-dollar company. That's okay. But an MC or a host can fit with them and elevate the entire experience. Entire experience. So this is the things. I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope it's been useful for you as you've thought. I want to make sure you see plenty of time for the rest of the speakers coming on as you're thinking about how can my next event be a great experience? How can my next event be an event that elevate? How can my next event be an event that people remember? How can my next event be an event that people want to come back to? How can my next event be an event that people will be referring others to? How can my next event be an event that people will always remember? And remember that experience goes a long way. My name is Ramon Ray. I think if Liz is ready, if not, Liz, you know I can go for another 45 hours on demand if you want. But Liz, I hope that was helpful. What do you think?
Of course, it was helpful. That's the best way to kick it off, is giving kind of that big overview of attendee experience. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing all your insights and the energy again. I got to talk
You're
about that
welcome, Liz.
energy.
Thanks for having me here,
Thank
Liz.
you,
I
Ramon.
appreciate it.
All right. So we are going to dive into a whole set of great sessions. But before we do, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Techsy Talk behind the scenes a little bit and give you some fun experiences to do yourself, some little activities to do. So thank you for joining. First of all, thank you. I know that you are very busy. You have a lot going on. We are streaming in a lot of different locations, and maybe you just caught this. Maybe you're tuning in. You're like, who is this girl? What is Techsy Talk Global? What's happening? You're in for a great time. So thank you for taking some time. I want you to do something, which is to think about why you're here and to start thinking about your events. We have a client called named Mike Michalowicz. He has written a series of books that we really love. And one thing that I learned from him recently was crush cringe activity. And I want you to start thinking about your events and start thinking about which ones you crush over. They were great. And it could be ones that you have planned for clients, ones that you've hosted yourself, or even things that you've attended. And what are the events that make you cringe? We've all been there. Registration lines is one of my like killer ones. I can't stand when there's long lines or it's really disorganized, or God forbid, they're still using paper. I swear this is something that's never going to go away. In any case, start thinking about that and start thinking about what you hope to get out of the next 3 days. So it's 2.5 hours of content approximately each day, 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, starting at 12 noon Eastern. So if you're just catching us now, make sure you set aside some time to join us for the next few days as well. We have so much great content, and we're focused around this attendee experience, which I believe very much is going to be the driver in 2023 and beyond for our events. COVID sidelined us. We did a ton of virtual, and I think we've seen a huge rush back to in person, but I think we are going to see attendee expectations really rise. I think people rushed back to events in 2022 because they're very excited to see everyone and it's exciting. And I think in 2023, even though you saw maybe you saw record numbers in 2022, I'm hearing a lot of that didn't happen, but everyone says, events are back, quote unquote. Even if that was the case, I think in 2023, you're going to start seeing people be much more discerning. And the only way you're going to stay relevant and keep growing your brand is to really focus here. So we're talking about some crazy topics over the course of the next few days. Neurodiversity is one of the very important ones. Today, we will talk about that with Megan Henshaw from Google. We will talk about experience profiles and this idea of belonging, which Megan and Naomi from Storycraft Labs have been working together on something, which is really exciting. I'm happy to share with you. We're going to be talking psychological safety, the art of creating memorable experiences by someone who is the director of experience, which, by the way, totally new job title that your companies need to implement. So that's just today. We have so much good content. As always, in the Techsy Talk fashion, we're fast paced. So put on your seatbelts, think about what you want to learn, dive in, and we're going to really hit you hard with some good information. I want to talk a little bit about what we did for Techsy Talk Global this year. What's different? We always say that we fail so that you don't have to. We try all the things that I would even like to try with my clients, for example. And sometimes I recommend it and they say, well, that's a horrible idea. And then I go do it. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, that was a horrible idea. I shouldn't have done it. But other times I can go back and say, we tried it and it works and you really should try it. So I want to talk you through what we've been doing over the course of the last year is really driving deep on our community. We have been building our community since 2010 when I got involved in the events industry. If you are someone who knows us from those times, put it in the chat because I want to know you remember our venue. We used to call them planner crawls, where we went to 3 venues in one night in 3 hours, and we would do these like very quick site visits for event planners. We had all kinds of meetups, and back then, no one was calling it community. We were calling them meetups. We were creating listservs, and over the years, many of you, and I know people are watching on different platforms, many of you have followed the iteration of where we are going as technology changes, as we change. Ed is here. I know he remembers those days very well. um, we have really focused this year on moving our community into Circle. So we have our Facebook community, which is where a lot of you are watching. But we've been very intentional about moving off of Facebook for a number of reasons. And I'm going to be honest, that's really challenging because people spend all their time on Facebook and it's really difficult to get people to sign up for something else and then regularly remember to use it. But that is a commitment that I'm making that I think you're going to need to know for your planning in 2023 is to really be intentional about what you're doing with your communities and how you're building them. And so that's one tip that I have learned myself the hard way this year. Really thinking of where you need to be strategically, creating the path for people to get there. And then it's all around messaging and consistency, not changing your path just because there's a little bit of friction. But if you know that's where you need to go, that's where you need to go. So we've done that this year, and we will continue to do that. Our Techsy Talk way is to really be relational, friendly, all about the personal relationships. So many of you, I see your faces on the comments and in the groups. And we've done all kinds of things. We've had great conversations over the years. We've shared all these Zoom discussions. And we try to really make our community audience driven. So with Techsy Talk Global this year, we made a few big changes based on what I shared. One is that we decided not to ticket this event. We have a community, and our community already includes a ticket to the event. And so we started realizing that people were just going to sign up for something they've technically already signed up for. That is really confusing. And I've really been thinking around this idea of if we want to give people a great experience, do we want them signing up over and over and over again for every little thing that we do? It's, first of all, a ton of work on our side, on the marketing side, but I think it gets annoying. I mean, you tell me because you guys are watching it. It gets annoying to sign up for a billion things and have this in a billion places. So we decided to stream this content free. The content is what I think is kind of the driver of the connection. And so we want to make that available to as many people as possible. We then decided to stream on social networks where people already live, where you might stumble upon. We're seeing our numbers go up as we're live here. It's because people, maybe they didn't even know it was happening, but they're joining today because they happen to be on social. And so this way, you don't have to create a new profile. You don't have to figure out what platform we're on. And there are a ton of great virtual platforms. We ourselves have used a ton of them for Techsy Talk and for other things. But for this, we decided get it out there and create the platform. Another thing we've done that I want to make sure you have time to do as well is we've partnered with Storycraft Labs to do experience profiles. This is something that I think you are definitely going to want to use for your events. What you could do is go now, if you haven't already, to techsytalk.com/experience-profiles. We'll try to put that in the chat, or you can just, it's not that hard to type it in. Take this little quiz. And at the end of the quiz, you're going to find out what kind of experience you prefer. So there are a few different types. It's almost like a personality quiz. So you'll see I am, no surprise, a thinker, someone who likes to think things through. And it'll give you a little description at the end. There are seekers, creators. And what we did was we took this information based on people who had filled it out prior and try to make sure that our agenda hits all the experience profiles. So for example, we will have 3 different kinds of networking over the 3 next days. today, at the close of today, we're going to jump into Zoom, open Zoom. Everyone can just kind of connect with each other in an open format. We'll do some networking and wrap up the day. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., which is 2 hours before the content starts, we are going to be in a different Zoom link doing more of a speed dating. So you can meet speed networking, I guess. So you can meet some of the people who are participating in this event. And then on day 3, we have more of an open format where we're going to have breakouts by topic, and you can choose which ones you want to go in. You can kind of move around and be part of different discussions. These all fit into the different experience profiles. There are people who, I'm one of those people, I actually prefer the speed networking. Just match me up with someone and give me that 5-minute like exit zone so I don't have to awkwardly end the conversation. That's my personality. Some people like lots of videos. Some people like the opportunity to move around. So we're going to try all 3 and offer that to you. So this is driven by the experience profiles. We looked at that data and then we thought, where are we missing? What do we need to add? And this is something you should be doing for your events. Storycraft also has a few extra things that we designed because of the profiles. So one, this is just a fun little thing to do, is create a techsy creature. I've already done mine. So if you go to this link right now, you can actually create your own creature. There's all these little things you can copy and paste from to design what yours likes. Hint, mine has a coffee cup in hand, of course. I sent it back. I'm like, hey, can we add a coffee cup? Because it doesn't feel like my creature unless it has the coffee. So create this creature. You can then share it on social media. You can look and see who else is here. We're going to create this kind of like zoo of techsy creatures based on the people who are watching and participating. So I hope you can take a few seconds to do this. We also have some kind of worksheets or things that you can use as you go through the next several days of content. This one is bit.ly/the techsy difference. Really thinking about what were you doing before, and based on what you've learned, how will you do things differently in the future? And it's a fun little activity that you can do during or after the event. We'll share this link again a few times throughout the next few days. I really like this for those of us who want to process this information and not just hear it in the background and, kind of lose it from there. And one more, bit.ly/techsy reflections is another great reflection worksheet that they've created just for you guys based on these experience profiles. So these are some fun things that you can do while we are kind of going through the process of the next few days to make it meaningful to you based on your experience profile. Okay, the last thing I wanted to mention, I have a lot of things I want to mention, but I'll come back to them. Experience profiles, we talked about what we're doing with ticketing. I also just wanted to mention that we decided to offer the content for these 3 days in multiple formats. So we do this in our Circle community, and that's where you can catch everything post-event. If you have not joined our Circle community, go to techsytalk.com/member. It's a free community to join. But what you will be able to do there, just so you know, is you'll be able to catch the full video recordings. You'll also be able to grab audio only in the format of a podcast if you want to go back and listen to the content, but you don't want to necessarily see the slides. We will have the transcripts, and we will also have notes. So someone from our team is going to go back to every session and just kind of take notes, almost like the Cliff Notes version. So you can dive into that and make sure that you are not missing anything. So again, based on the profiles and really wanting to create an inclusive experience, we want to make sure that if you want this content, it's available to you when you want it and in the format that you want. A lot of other thinking went into Techsy Talk, and I'd be happy to answer questions and talk about it, but we have way too many good speakers and I cannot delay. We're right on time. So let me just look here. Okay, we're dropping links in the comments. Thank you to everyone. Chloe, oh snap, documenting behavior change with that Techsy difference tool. I love it. Marla says she's usually an adapter, but this time came up as an explorer. That's so interesting. I am definitely a thinker. Jennifer is a harmonizer. We have adapters. So I'm so happy to see the different profiles in here and to see all of you interacting. Please keep that up as we transition to a session that I know is going to change your thinking around event and attendee experience. we have Phil Mershon, the Director of Experience for Social Media Examiner. They do some great events. And I think just even having the title Director of Experience is pretty cool. But he's going to talk to us about his new book. Hi, Phil. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me.
So excited to have you as our opening keynote. I know that you have a new book coming out called Unforgettable, The Art of Creating Memorable Experiences. So we want to dive into that. I'm going to kind of leave it to you, and I'll be back here in case I heard you might need some help at some point during this. So I'll be here.
Well, right. Yeah. And thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here with everyone. And I love the fact that the profile worked so well. I'm a seeker, and thankfully my session is one that was recommended to me. So it would have been kind of awkward if it hadn't been. So if you're a seeker, you're in the right place. But if you just want to create unforgettable experiences at your event, you're also in the right place. So let's just dive in here. I want to make sure we deliver a lot of value for you. So I will never forget the summer of 2016, back when we went to movies often. Our kids had all become teenagers, so we could leave them at home. And that summer, my wife and I were looking forward to going to two movies. The first, let's see, I've got to get the advancer to show up here. There we go. All right. The first one was The Lost City of Z. And the second one was Rogue One. Now, if you happen to like both of these movies, that's okay. This isn't about that. This is about my experience and not yours. So my experience could not have been any different. The Lost City of Z, well, I was bored. In fact, I left the theater 5 times. I have never done that before or after, except at home when I have a remote control. I was daydreaming. When I left, I went to the bathroom twice. I texted once, and then I was just wandering the halls waiting for my wife to be done because she was actually enjoying the movie. Rogue One, that couldn't have been any more different. I lost track of time. There was no way that I was leaving to go to the bathroom, no matter how badly I might have had to go. And you know, I'm over 50, and so I do have that. I was on the edge of my seat. I could not miss that show. So reflecting back on those two experiences, I asked myself this question: what's the price of boredom? Now, let's be clear. Lost City of Z might not have been boring for everyone. It was for me. It's a metaphor. So let's be clear about that. But I did a little bit of research. Lost City of Z had 1.9 million people attend. That's not bad for a movie. They lost $11 million. I don't think the CFO was happy, and he probably wouldn't endorse an event like that again. Rogue One, on the other hand, well, they had 100 million people attend by 2019, more by now. Their budget was huge, $200 million. They grossed over $1 billion, 5x return. Your CFO is going to say yes every single time. Now, here's the reality. Most of us are creating experiences at our events that are ultimately going to be forgettable within days or weeks or months. And some of that's just reality. People can't remember everything. We want to avoid those negative, unforgettable experiences, like the naked guy who was taking a bath in the women's bathroom at my event, or like the song that went viral, or like something else. And you could probably name something you wish everyone could forget about your event, right? Can I get an amen in the chat? But we're all striving for those moments about our event that are unforgettable, that get them to remember what we accomplished. And so that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to think about how can we create more unforgettable experiences. And in some cases, how do we get out of our way? To get us started, I'd like to ask you to find a piece of paper. You can use your computer if you want. I think this works better if you write on paper and use pen. And I'm going to give you exactly 1 minute to remember a memorable event experience that you've had, one that you didn't design, one that you weren't involved with planning or producing. It happened at somebody else's event. And let these questions here on the screen inform what you write about. But I just want you to free flow write about that experience and be as descriptive as you can. Don't worry about grammar or anything else. Just write for 1 solid minute, talking about what you were doing, who was there, who were you with, what were you wearing, what were the smells you can remember, what do you hear? Are you ready? Here we go. Here's a little bit of music to help you. The time starts now. All right, Lori, I see your question. This information right now is for you only. You can share it later if you want to, but I want you to keep this event experience in mind. In one word or two word phrases, drop into the chat real quick. What are some of the words that you would use to capture that experience? What's something that the event organizers did that made it unforgettable? Go ahead and in the chat. I know when Ramon was talking earlier, he talked about smell. And smell can be so good. The colors can be good. We've got a Facebook user who says that it was surprising. Something surprising took place. What else would you guys say makes something memorable? While I'm waiting for some of your responses to come in, here are some of the things that I've thought about. We've got some more coming in. Moments of delight. It's engaging. That's awesome. Yeah, and we've got, Ramon talked about being multisensory. I think that is critical to the experience. Another user says joy, energizing, using the senses, personalization. Hey, here we go. You're like reading from my script. So multisensory, I want to just lean in a little bit more to that because sometimes you can use the wrong smell. I was driving down the road recently and I smelled rotten eggs. And that took me immediately back to an experience I had when I was in Kenya back in college, where I was living next to a sugar plantation and they have a refinery and sulfur is used. And I got sick whenever I smelled that. So sometimes you can have a smell that can trigger negative emotions. So be careful. Also be careful about anyone who's got sensitivities. Why is it significant? Liz asked you when you started out today to think about that question. Why is it important that you're here right now? But what can you do at your events to make the event matter? Another thing that makes something memorable is you've created space for those conversations that take something that you planned to go deeper. Have you ever felt like this where time seems to stretch or almost come to a standstill? Like you're in this moment where you realize this is a much more important moment than anything else that could be going on right now. And I hope over the next 3 days, you have one of those spots. One of my grad school professors liked to say, you never know when a 15-minute conversation is going to change your life. And if we do our jobs right, we can create the space for that to happen. And people can literally sense that time lasted longer than the 2 or 3 days that they were with you. Sometimes it's serendipity. You have this meeting like it's going to happen in the networking, perhaps, or happening in the chat right now. You might find someone at this event who becomes a future partner, a future employer, a future employee, just a friend in the industry. Or, as several of you have commented, the unexpected experience. So this is one of our MCs, and he got up and acted like he was Neo from the Matrix as he was introducing a keynote talk. That was a memorable moment that people commented on and shared frequently. And this is him again. He is here sharing the stage with a hula dancer, and he was willing to go the extra mile. This is one of those that's priceless, but maybe he would like to forget that he ever did this. So if you haven't read this book, The Power of Moments, you need to read it. This is a must read for every person in the events industry. They didn't write it specifically for us, but this concept of the power of moments is one we all need to be thinking about. They say not all moments are created equally. And I would add, not all moments are remembered equally. So what they concluded, they did a study on Walt Disney World and the theme park experience that people have. And they found that most people have a very positive experience when they first arrive at the theme park, when they see the princess castle, when they meet one of the costumed characters, they meet a princess, they go on their favorite ride, they see that closing parade. And those memories can overwash those bad experiences, like standing in the long lines, like sweltering in the heat, like having to pay way too much for that hot dog and a Coke. And so they realized that if we put more emphasis on those peak magical moments, we can create a great experience for people. Now, one thing they didn't account for, and I talked to Lee Cockrell, who was COO for decades at the Disney parks. One thing they didn't account for is the details. There are details that Disney pays attention to that other theme parks don't. So you've got to actually have both. For example, they know how far apart to put trash cans because it can be frustrating to be carrying around your soaking leftover paper from your ice cream cone. So that got me thinking about what are the moments we need to be thinking about as event organizers, planners. And they are the first impressions. When people arrive at your event, that might be at the airport, that might be at the hotel, that might be at your event venue. What is that first impression? It might be the first session they go to or the first party. And then the contour of your event. What are those peak moments? That might again be a party or a networking event or something that you've put a lot of effort, a big unveil or a special entertainment act or a certain keynote speaker that you've brought in. And then a place that I don't feel like most of us spend enough time as event organizers, and that is the last impressions. Here you're going to see a picture of Mark Schaefer. In 2019, he reversed this because up until 2019, our practice was at the end of the event, we wanted to get a staff picture because we had this really cool backdrop. And so all of our staff would disappear up on the stage and we'd be taking a picture while our guests are standing around. Okay, the event's over. And we realized, no, we need to reverse that. So Mark came to me and said, Phil, how can we create a special moment? We decided to create an indoor fireworks show with confetti. And it was a moment that lasted for 3 minutes, but was shared for weeks and months. You can re-engineer your last impression, but I would argue you also need to think about the brick and mortar. And here's what I mean by that. If you have all these things, your first impressions, your peak moments, and your last impressions stacked together, but they're not held together by the right mortar, and that's the details. That's where Walt Disney World focuses on details like holding the entire experience together. You need to have a thought toward the connector. So that's your MC and your host. That's the greeters in the hallway. That's your staff knowing how to anticipate problems that people are having. So I would love to know how many of you would consider yourself to be an idea factory. You're like Willy Wonka. You've got so many ideas, you don't have budget to do all of your ideas. Or if you're not the idea factory, how many people know somebody on your staff? You've got someone on your team that you just have to kind of almost shut them down. They've got so many ideas. I'm going under the assumption that many of you would consider yourself to be an idea factory. So today, I want to help you with a little bit of a different problem. And that is, I am assuming that you have this incredible experience that's going to be unforgettable that you've designed, but you've got things that are getting in the way of it being remembered. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I find it's a lot like the playground merry-go-round. These guys are on TikTok and they are way too big for this merry-go-round. And it's funny, but it's a bad experience because they're being thrown off and thrown in. And that's because there's two forces at play here. And that merry-go-round was not designed for the way they were exerting centripetal and centrifugal forces. And these forces are at play at your event. If one is too strong, it's going to throw you off. If the other's too strong, it's going to push you to the middle. If they're in perfect balance and the perfect speed, it's a very enjoyable, almost unforgettable experience. Here's my fear. Many of us have forces that are working against us that are undermining the very work and the very experience that we're trying to create. And so today, I want to spend my time focused on those. So they form the word dried, like this dried bread. And dried bread's really only good for croutons and salad and feeding to the birds. Most of us don't like eating it because it makes our mouth go dry. But the words are dullness, and we've already talked a little bit about being boring. Resistance, that means we are holding back, we're reserving judgment, we're critical, we're skeptical. Isolation, we're staying to ourselves, we're not really engaging in the community. Exhaustion, meaning we're either tired or we're overwhelmed and confused. Or squirrel, we're distracted. And those are the forces that are working against us. There's probably others, but they're the 5 that I've noticed the most. And so we're going to talk about how do we turn a dried event into a tasty event. And forgive my clever use of acronyms, and some of these words aren't perfect, but it gets the point across. We want to go from dull to transformative, from resistance to accepting and welcoming and embracing, from isolation to being together and part of the community, from exhaustion to being stimulated and energized, and from being distracted to engaging. Let's start out with this. But as I've been working on this book, Liz mentioned, I've realized there are 25 ways that I can share with you, and I'm going to share a few of them with you here today that help you to create a memorable marketing experience. Because let's face it, we are creating marketing experience here. And so the first one is if we use the memory formula, and that is,
hey, Phil.
What?
Phil.
Yeah.
Hey, Phil.
What? Who is that?
Phil, are you really going to do this?
Yeah, of course. This is great stuff.
Dude, this is boring.
All right. We all hate it when a speaker gets up and has a slide that is full of words that are meaningless. And I hope you didn't take a screenshot of that last slide, because it is meaningless and it was boring. And we need to get over creating boring experiences. So I recently asked the all-knowing Facebook, what makes an event boring? And here are some of the things that they had to say. Standing in lines, period. But for the bathroom or for coffee, how could we reinvent those experiences? Maybe there doesn't need to be a line, but maybe we can actually create that into a memorable moment. Maybe not in the bathroom line, but maybe. I don't know. Let's think about it. Bad food. When did we start serving bad food? That's not a good idea. Weak or no coffee. We've got to provide caffeine somehow, some way, whether we are getting it for free or charging for it, it needs to be there. And then, I'm guilty of this one. Speakers who read from their slides. Now, we've all been to those sessions, right? Where they just boringly read from their slides. And then Liz implied this one earlier, that registration, long lines can be one of those moments, but I find the moment after to be one of the most awkward experiences at an event where you've never attended before. I'll share a little bit about that later, but could we reinvent that to make that a highlight moment? And then, who loves being herded from session to session like you're a cow? Like they turn up the music and they are forcing you out of the room and they give you no choice but to move on. That's where this picture of inoculation comes in. If we bore people, we are going to inoculate them. They're not going to have the experience we want, and we are going to get negative reviews or no reviews because they're quietly quitting. Can we say that about events? I think people are doing that. So let's make a commitment to each other. Say this in the chat. Say this to yourself: no more boring, or shall we say no more forgettable events. Let's do that. Let's change the way we do events. All right, so how do we do that? Let's take dullness into transformative. The way we do that is we make it personally meaningful. Mark Schaefer is speaking here to a crowd, and he's talking about how hard it has been during the pandemic and to be a marketer. And a lady in the crowd lets out a deep moan. And he stops the session and says, who did that? And he says, ma'am, you look like you need a hug. And this wasn't awkward. He got off the stage and he went and gave her a shoulder hug. And there was like this collective moment of identifying, we're in this together. Create ownership like Liz did earlier today. Have your MC checking in. How's it going with you? You guys are doing great commenting in the chats here. I can't even keep up with all your comments. This is fantastic. So let's change it from dull to transformative. And one of the ways you do that is you do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. You create personal moments. For example, at our event recently, we had a lady named Ria who was having a bad time, but someone learned it was her birthday. So I got a performer to come and sing happy birthday, literally change the entire experience for her. What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to create a moment right now for one of you. And Liz has identified someone who's going to come on screen with me. So if you would come on screen with me, Liz and Jennifer, I understand that you have had an experience that's memorable. So I'd like you to tell everyone in about 30 seconds about the experience that you wrote about when we had that little exercise a while back.
Yeah. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
So recently I took my husband and I took our kids to Universal, and we're big Harry Potter fans, and just walking in to that experience was just amazing. Really amazing event.
How did it make you feel?
Anytime like our kids are delighted or engaged, it's just kind of magical, and we're a pretty busy family. So having those times to just step away and kind of be in this magical world that we had been, really getting engaged in through movies was just unbelievably magical. And everything about it just was
just fun and memorable. And like you said before, I've kind of forgotten the pain of my feet and the expense already. I'm like, let's go again. While I was there, I was like, I'm never doing this again. But then now I'm like, we're going back one day.
Awesome. All right. So Jennifer, this is going to be a gift for you. I'm going to make a song right here and now. It's a one of a kind that will never happen again. Based on what you've just described for me, your universal, magical family experience. So here we go.
That's
All right.
amazing.
So I don't do that just to say I can do that. You need, all of us can figure out ways that we can do for somebody something special that we are uniquely able to do that's going to create a special moment within the context of our event that you wish you could do for everyone. Because as you do that repeatedly, it'll create ripple effects and they'll start doing things for others at your event and they'll start talking about it. And it has a profound impact. All right, let's keep going here. We have, I think, like 10 minutes to get through everything else. So I'm going to buckle your seatbelts. Here we go. So we've got Complainer Carol. Complainer Carol came to me at our event one year, and she was definitely resistant. In fact, I think she was on her way out the door because when I asked her how it was going, she said, terrible. None of the speakers know what's going on. Your staff can't help me. I think I wasted my money. I think I'm about to go home. I said, well, hold on a second. What's going on? What are you trying to learn? And she told me what she was trying to learn. And I realized she had just not been to the right sessions. And so I said, here, let me grab a program. And I helped her find 3 sessions. And I said, go sit in the front row. As soon as they're done, I know these 3 speakers can help you with the very questions that you're asking. They have the advanced experience that you're looking for. Changed her event. Jesse Cole, who's speaking on Friday, says this: listen carefully, respond creatively. He got that from someone else. Do that. You can change someone's experience in a minute if you'll listen to what their complaint is and figure out a creative way to solve it. All right, what about isolated Irene? We've all seen her. She's sitting against the wall. She's off in a corner. She's tucking her head inside of her phone. She's not sure she wants to participate. Maybe she's more of an introvert. Maybe she's just shy. Who knows? Well, there's 2 tactics I've got for you. One, here in this picture is Chris Brogan, and Chris is a master at this. He always leaves a spot in the circle. That's why I call it the open circle, where he can invite someone to join the conversation, but he not only creates space for them, he literally invites them and says, hey, Phil, what do you think about this? So that that person feels immediately welcomed in. Another secret tactic comes from one of our MCs, Leslie Samuel, and it goes like this. If you see someone who's feeling isolated, stop, smile, and talk to them. Literally, 9 times out of 10, you're going to find the person is very open to talking. Sometimes they're actually working, but most of the time they're hiding in their work and they're just looking for someone to pursue them. And I think a lot of times as organizers, we get really busy with the work we're doing, so we can train our staff to do this too. It doesn't have to be you, but our staff, if we're on the lookout for those people and inviting them in, it could be the thing that changes their event. It was, I think, in 2016, the first time I went to NAMM. And I don't know if you've been to NAMM. If you have, go ahead and talk in the chat about it. It's an amazing but huge event. 100,000 people went to it pre-pandemic. It's for the music industry. First time I went, I had that experience at registration where I got through the line, had my book, had my badge, had my bag, and I did not know what to do next. And it was overwhelming. That's a huge place. 100,000 square feet at least of display trades floor space. And I became exhausted and I didn't know what to do. Their program was at least 75 pages long. And I decided I was so tired, I was going to go back to my hotel and rest and study the program. Here's the problem with that. My hotel was a mile away. I walked a mile so I could rest. That's kind of silly. So I learned from that experience a couple of things. I'm going to create a quiet zone so people, if they need to rest, they can go do that. I'm going to have a new attendee orientation where I can help people get a lay of the land before they ever get there. And they may have done this at NAMM. I don't know. I probably missed it. I'm going to have concierges who their job is to help people select the right sessions. And I'm also going to say, you know what? You may have FOMO, but it's okay. You don't have to go from 6 a.m. networking walk till the 1 a.m. after party after the after party. It's okay to skip some things. You don't have to do it all. But the biggest opportunity I saw is to have clear communication. Make it really easy for people to choose what their path is going to be. It was the summer of 2019, and for my daughter's birthday, we went to see Hamilton in Oklahoma City. She was a huge fan, had the whole score memorized. We drove down, walked in. It was amazing. The energy at a musical, I've never experienced anything like it. People were taking selfies up in the theater. That doesn't happen at musicals. And then it started, and it was amazing. It just, started with a bang. The music, the dancing, the costumes, the set designs, the lighting, it was all stellar. And it reached this really poignant moment in the first act. And then I call her Lizzie. She pulled out her phone and she took that picture with a flash. And instantly my mind is looking up and I'm thinking, is she going to do it again? Are they going to come and take her away? What's going to happen? And then I looked and the actors had not blinked. They had kept going. They say at UC Berkeley that it takes 23 minutes for you to regain a state of focus after it's lost. Well, in this case, it was between 3 and 5 minutes, and I was completely re-engaged with the show, loved it. I didn't remember Lizzie, and that's a made-up name. Who knows, man or woman, whatever. I had not remembered that anymore, but it's true. At our events, people are getting distracted by things, and they're going to get distracted. And here's a couple of ways that we can overcome that. One is you need speakers who know the 7-minute rule. And that means every 7 minutes, you need to be mixing up your medium. You've noticed I've been telling a lot of stories, and that's one way. A mix of medium could be videos. It could be getting people engaged in the audience, but you guys are doing amazing with that. You also need an MC who can handle the unexpected, like when technology doesn't work, like when there's somebody in the audience who is being disruptive, like when you don't know what's going to happen. You need someone like Ramon. Here's what I would say. If you want an event to be boring, grab someone in the hall last minute, one of your junior volunteers, and say, hey, can you go introduce this speaker? That's bound to be a terrible experience. I've had it happen. I would rather you just didn't introduce me and let me introduce myself if you're not going to put the time into creating a great experience. Your MCs, like Ramon said, are your friends. And then I would also encourage you to think about the musicology of your event. This is a new concept to me, but a friend said, what if you could get Hans Zimmer or John Williams to write the musical score for your event? What would they do? How, if they were approaching it like it was a film score, what kinds of things would they think about? And they would think about the psychographics of your event, like who are the people coming and what kind of music connects with them in the way that you want to connect? What are the goals of your event? Look at those peak moments and how can music enhance those? Look at the circadian rhythms, morning versus noon versus night. People's energy levels are changing throughout the day. Music can enhance or distract from that. And then create a scene by scene plan. In a movie, for a film score, it's actually second by second, but I think for events, we can go scene by scene, session by session, but think about what kind of music is going to best enhance this. Here's what John Vitale, an event musicologist, said to me last week. He said, event producers often leave music as a last minute item for their AV provider to figure out. Why do that? Music is one of the most effective ways to connect emotionally with the attendees and supercharge each module, dare I say, scene of your event. All right, go ahead and in the chat. We've talked about 5 different threats of events. Which one do you think you need to solve? Is it dullness? Is it resistance? Is it isolation, exhaustion, or distraction? Go ahead and tell me. I was going to run a poll, but it wasn't easy to do the tech. So one of you tech people, next time I do this, will be able to help me figure that out. StreamYard doesn't make that super easy. And I would love to know. While you're answering that question, I'm going to tell you one last story. So in 2016, the way we solved this is we were moving from a single hotel to a citywide event. And we recognized people might get exhausted. They might want to go back to their hotel. And we feared they wouldn't return to the event if they did. So we said, well, what are the reasons they would go back to their hotel? Well, there were three. One is they might need to go back and get some work done. The second is they might want to go back and rest. And the third is they're networking a lot. They may need to brush their teeth. So we solved it by saying, well, let's create lots of different places you can work. Let's make sure we've got a quiet zone where you can rest. And then this is Marlene from Denmark. She helped us answer our third. She came up to the information desk and she said, hey, can you point me to a local pharmacy? I forgot my toothbrush and I need to get a toothbrush because I don't want to scare people with my breath. Well, the team was able to say, well, I've got one better, follow me. And one of the ladies led her to the women's bathroom and said, see here, we've got a basket with toothbrushes and toothpaste and floss and mouthwash. You don't have to leave. You can keep on learning and networking all day long. Now, Marlene was blown away. Marlene said, man, if they thought about that detail, what else have they thought about? I'm buying my ticket right now. And then she went home and she started telling her friends. Now 4 or 5 of her friends have come to the event. A $3 investment turned into multi-thousands of dollars of return on investment, all because we thought about the toothbrush moment. So what is your toothbrush moment? What is that moment that could cause people to derail, that if you got creative, you could turn that experience around? Think about that. Maybe share that in the link where we're putting some of our learnings from the event. It's been my pleasure to be here with you today. I am Phil Mershon. I'd love to see you. If you're interested, come out to social media marketing world. We always are looking for event profs to be volunteers. And if you'd like the first chapter of my book and to be notified when it comes out, drop me an email with the subject line Unforgettable. And if you have other questions about our event or anything with our company, that's the email. Take a screenshot. These are all the places on social you can find me. And Liz, I'm a little bit long, but thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone else got the chills when you did your saxophone piece. I don't know why Lizzie had to be the name, though, for Hamilton. But
I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay. So glad that you shared all of that. And we can't wait for your book to come out. We were hoping that we could share it with everyone at techsytalk, but I know it's not quite out yet, but definitely get that first chapter. We don't have a ton of time for questions, but there was one that I wanted to just get your thoughts on, which Chloe wants to know. How do you address isolation in virtual events, especially? Any thoughts on that? And I think we can talk more about this in our networking too.
Yeah, we should definitely keep talking about it and see what others have done. The hard part there is you can't see them being isolated, right? So that's the biggest trick. And I was also going to talk about the quiet quitters at your event. You don't know who those people are and why they're leaving because they didn't ever tell you. But I think the more you can do at virtual events to engage people early, I know that was talked about even previously with Ramon today, the more reasons that you can give people to engage and make it a safe place and make it someplace that they realize these are my people, the more likely they are. It's a lot harder when people are multitasking, to get them to be fully present, fully engaged with your event. So I think we have to work harder, but it really comes down to that personal reason and getting wins early. The more things you can do to get people to give it a try. I think you have to make it super easy to step into the community early, and then you'll see more success. It's not going to be the same as the physical, at least in my experience. I don't know if we'll ever fully overcome that just because of the psychological barrier that's there, but maybe there's other thoughts on that we'll hear later.
That was great. And thank you so much for sharing that. Let's definitely keep the conversation going in our networking that we have at the end of today's sessions. And lots of great comments on the chat. So please keep those coming in. On the private chat side here in StreamYard, someone said, Phil is the man, rock star. So since I can't put that on stage, I had to shout it out here. Okay, Phil, that was amazing. Great way to kick this off. I don't know about you, but I think this is some of the best content I've seen at an event recently. And not just because I helped curate it, but because these speakers really know what they're doing in terms of keeping you engaged and talking about things that they really know what they're talking about. We are now going to dive straight into our next set of sessions. I'm very excited to introduce Naomi Claire, who is with Storycraft Labs. We've talked about them a lot already with the experience profiles, and she has been doing a lot of work with Megan Henshaw from Google XI Project. I have been, stalking you guys and happy to hear a little more detail about all the work that you guys have been doing. And a term I heard from Megan, I know you have been working with her on this idea of belonging. And when we think of attendee experience, what does that really mean? How do we create that? So thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand it over to you to tell us more.
I'm so excited to share, because this journey, and it has been a journey for Megan and I, it has been one where we've learned a lot through the process. And one of the things that we've learned about is belonging. What does it mean? The answer is that it means many different things to different people. So the trick is really understanding your audience to know what sparks belonging for them. And this idea, something that I was there, I was back again. The idea of the journey is something that I want to talk about today with you. And I'm going to do that by sharing a presentation that just goes through a little bit of the process, the journey that I've been on with Megan at Google and with the rest of the team at Storycraft Lab as well. So I don't know if we're able to bring up my my screen presentation. Here we go. Yes. So this was how it all began. Let's talk about that. So it began early in this year, kind of at the end of 2021. We'd first connected. Megan had put out a call for folks to join the XI community and contribute there. And that community is like this amazing incubator and accelerator space for innovation, specifically to do with experience design. So it's something that everybody here should be aware of and watching. And they had at the start of this year 3 areas that they wanted to investigate. And we plugged into this first one initially, the new rules of engagement, social norms and appetites. And what we brought to them was the experience profiles tool that everybody's been working with and started to play with through the techsytalk event. And we said, we're going to offer this up for some experimentation. Let's see how it works in helping Google XI understand the evolving techno-social norms and the ways that our audiences are evolving. And we began that investigation alongside serendipity, delight, and then some work that was happening also on kind of how are we redefining our value narratives. The really interesting thing about this journey, as I just shared, is that we didn't start off with the idea that belonging was an endpoint or even a destination in any way as we began our work. We began with that area of preferences and looking into personalization. And what we found is that the act of personalization are often acts of inclusion, because when you are considering somebody's preferences for personalization, you are being inclusive of their unique needs, desires, and frame on the world. And when that happens, when you're creating that inclusive event, you are automatically generating community. And when you hold the spaces for community to gather and form, and you support that within your events, those are the moments where belonging blossoms and flourishes. So we've started on our empathy journey and had all of these discoveries along the way. And the big one for us was that all roads lead through belonging. And that was really super exciting for us. And the more conversations that we had about belonging, the more we wanted to talk about it. Actually, we wanted to understand more and more, as I said to Liz, what does belonging mean to different people? And what we were finding through the conversations is that people talked about belonging. They got a kind of handle on the concept and a way to communicate it to others through 3 main avenues. People might talk about meaning and how applicable and useful and relevant an experience is. Wow, that experience was so useful to me and advancing my growth and my place in life and how I feel, my perspective on the world, right? That if you came at it through making meaning, that was one avenue for accessing belonging. Another and quite natural way to start is to think about the feelings, right? That Raymond talked about and Phil talked about as well, right? So often people would say, well, when I belong, I feel. And they would talk about this emotional journey that they would go on to arrive at a place of belonging. And we started to hear a lot about where I began and how I came to belonging there. The other area that people consider when we talk about belonging is what we termed magic. It's essentially this transformative element of the experience, that something changed. It changed my perspective. It changed my view on the world. And we started to, as we were listening to all of these conversations and taking notes in the mural tool that you all will see, we started to hear just these amazing quotes coming from within the industry. And the office hours that we were holding on belonging became a place that many people felt a sense of belonging at, in a kind of weird and meta type of a way. And we started to hear much more insight around the meaning, the journeys through meaning to arrive at belonging, the journeys through feeling to arrive at belonging, the journeys through magic to arrive at belonging. And as we were gathering all of this wonderful conversation and data around dialogue, we started to count words and consider how they appeared, those journeys that people would take to get to an end point of belonging, as expressed by the unique individuals. And what was so interesting, and this is what I'm super excited to share today, is that we began to see, kind of distilling from those conversations, moving from this very qualitative to quantitative data in terms of the words that were turning up, a series of ladders or pathways to a state of belonging. And one of the big learnings for us is that, we encounter, when we see people coming into our experiences, we encounter a beginning state and we encounter a desired end state that we are helping people move towards in the experiences that we're creating. So we were seeing, for example, some people talking about beginning from a place of skepticism or fear and ending up at freedom to be. So the ultimate kind of end result that we saw here was that we have 8 pathways that we're looking at here to bring our audiences through to a state of belonging. Freedom to be, which is a pathway of acceptance. You might encounter attendees that begin with fear and move from fear or skepticism to a place of safety and trust, ultimately expression, and then that state of freedom to be. And for us as event creators, it becomes about, and experience creators, it becomes about how we provide those moments and the support to move people from one step on this ladder of belonging to the next step. And experiences are a way that we can be very intentional about how we do that. Love and appreciation is a pathway of recognition, that you're not just invited or accepted or valued, but ultimately loved. And that condition of love and appreciation is adjacent to that state of belonging. The true authenticity pathway sits on the cusp of feeling and magic, and people approach this with an intent or an expectancy, and they can go through this process of being vulnerable and sharing and finding that reinforces a sense of community. We also saw, and what was really interesting here at the bottom through magic was that things started to get a little more weird in the magical pathways. They weren't quite organized in the same way, but we've got 3 different pathways through magic that all end at this sense of universality. The journey discovery pathway is something that is much more singular or lone. And then as you move through from open-heartedness to serendipity and connection, that feeling of, wow, in this whole big wide world, this amazing universe, I found you. That's kind of like a one to few connection that happens and has a transformative aspect to it. And then there's the group experience that happens through shared experiences there. And you can see the other pathways here: fulfillment and joy, a pathway of happiness, and taking somebody from a passive or viewer state at their entry point at our experience to ultimately feeling fulfilled and the sense of happiness that comes with that. Adjacent to that, purposeful energy, an intention. You might begin in a reflective state, but through synthesis, discovery, and advocacy, you end up kind of full of purpose. And that is another condition that takes us to belonging. And then finally, empowerment, that pathway of action. You might begin seeking dialogue, wanting to talk to folks about different topics, But through the process of knowledge exchange and conversation and connection with people, you are inspired, you find your tribe, and you really feel empowered to act in a way that you hadn't done before. So these are the emerging insights. As I talk about our journey with belonging, it's something that is ongoing. We're not done yet. We started to play with filling in, as experienced designers and creators. We felt a draw to fill the gaps in between. And then we stopped ourselves because we realized that the most powerful thing actually is going to be to put this framework and idea into the hands of other experienced creators and allow them to fill in the gaps, and not be prescriptive about what the outcomes are. But as you approach your different events, asking those questions around how you might assess where your audience sits on their belonging journey, and what are the opportunities for you to move them from one state to the next. And I'm just sharing here, for those of you that have a second device and you want to scan that QR code, we are going to be opening up a Wheel of Belonging specifically for the techsytalk community here to go in and add your own perspectives and quotes on how you approach and access belonging in the events that you experience. I can see here that my time is up, so I'm just going to hold there.
So much good content. And this is so exciting. So we're putting the link in the chat for everyone to be able to check out. We do have more time tomorrow with Naomi to dive into this Wheel of Belonging more. I saw Chloe said this map is amazing. Another person said, I love the idea of conversations about magic as a means to belonging. This is definitely the kind of thing that I geek out on personally. It's like, oh, look at all these things that we could be thinking about. Do you want to share a few more things before we move on to Megan? I don't want to cut you off.
No, it's all good. I could talk about this for ages, really, but I'd talk everybody's ears off. I think the best thing to do is just to encourage everybody to pop into the Wheel of Belonging. I've given you kind of the background on how we came to that and how we're using it. See what it does for you, and then tomorrow, if we come back, we'll spend a little bit more time looking at that and talking about some of the specific responses. But yes, somebody did see an Ali Magyar sighting in there.
I heard she's here.
Awesome. So that's amazing. But I'm so excited for you all to hear from Megan as well on the neuro inclusion and the new project.
Yes, thank you so much, Naomi. And I do see Chloe's asking link for more information about Google. We're actually going to dive into that right now. So Naomi, thanks for joining us for that quick session. And again, more from her tomorrow in this Wheel of Belonging. We're going to bring on Megan Henshaw from Google now to talk more about Google XI. How are you?
I'm great. How are you? I'm so happy to be here.
So happy to have you here. We are very excited to dive in. People are already asking, so I'm not going to take any of your time. You want to just dive into your content and we'll see if we can fit in any questions or anything towards the end?
Yeah, let's do it. I think there's some slides coming up. Perfect. So Naomi mentioned a little bit about the Google XI community. XI is short for Experience Institute, but I wanted to share a little bit about myself and how XI came to be and sort of the journey that I've been on that led me here to you all today, and to share some of the projects that have come out of XI around inclusion specifically. So my job at Google is to really both anticipate and understand what the business of Google, the employees of Google need as it relates to events and experiences. So my team manages about 600 event spaces globally across our campus portfolio. We also administer those with professional event services teams. And my role on that team is to look across the over 100,000 events we do every year, listen, observe to what are current pain points and needs, and then what is emerging. So I like to say I spend about 40% of my time in the present solving for current pain points, problems, opportunities, and about 60% of my time in like 2030 and beyond, trying to help us make informed decisions for the future to proactively set us up to be the right partners, the right service providers. So in 2021, Naomi mentioned we brought together this collective, and it was really because I was in a very disoriented, lonely place strategically. We went into strategic planning, and I was like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot we don't know about future of work and return to office and all of these emerging technology solutions that could be at our disposal. There was just too much to unpack alone. And so we brought together this community of lots of folks inside the Googleverse that have skin in the events and experiences game, but we source lots of brilliant minds, wizards, creators, disruptors outside of Google as well. And XI was born. Next slide, please. So when we started the community last August, Naomi shared sort of the key focus areas that we democratically decided to lean into. Like, what were we passionate about? And I think when we first kicked things off, we were very much thinking about what could the future look like? What widgets do we want to test? What do we want to experiment with? I sort of anticipated that we would heavily lean into technology solutions and piloting and prototyping different solutions that, AR, VR, XR studios. I thought things would move pretty slow and that there would be some decision paralysis, but I'm very happy to report that none of that was true of this community. We very much anchored to human-centered design and leaned into what we saw from our research consultancy partners and the 90 days of learning that we did as a community to say, okay, solving for what the future could look like is cool and all, but why don't we actually start to chip away at this much bigger, more important question of what should the future of our discipline look like? What should the future of event and experience design look like? Next slide, please. And so that's what we did. We actually phoned lots of friends, brought a lot more people in, and we're very much focused as a community now on driving change for good, reimagining the value narrative of what we do for our organizations, making events a safe, welcoming, loving, I love that Naomi used the word love, environment for everyone. Next slide. We have definitely evolved in numbers and pursuit to try to create the future that we want instead of just anticipating it. And that is now absolutely the approach that I take in my role at Google as well. So next slide. So this is my son, Otis. So I was on this journey with the XI community, very much leaning into human-centered design, how we can personalize and curate experiences that resonate with everyone. And we noticed a real gap around neuro-inclusion. We started hearing a lot from our audiences that they weren't willing to accept or tolerate the same things that they were back in 2019 prior to the pandemic. They wanted more space. They needed time between things. They didn't want to feel overscheduled. They were a lot more conservative with their resources, time, attention, money. We really had to earn it, and we had to create autonomy and agency and choice. So all of this was happening professionally, and we were learning a lot through the XI work. Simultaneously, my son Otis was diagnosed with autism. And so we were already sort of on this journey trying to find neuroinclusion resources, education, and enablement for our industry. And I was on this, personal journey, very much trying to do this for my son. And so it was like a neon sign from the universe, like, why don't you connect these two dots? And work with the XI community, this network of brilliance, to build it. And so that's what we did. Next slide. So a couple stats. Some of the things we were learning through the XI work: an estimated 20% of the global population is neurodivergent. Next slide. That's 1.5 billion people on Earth. That is 1 in 5 people on our teams, in our organizations, at our events, in our communities. And if that is not what you know to be true, then there's likely a lot of masking and hiding authentic selves happening around you every day. When we got the diagnosis with Otis, it explained a lot for us. For example, traveling takes us weeks of preparation. We literally rehearse and we do social stories and we practice in order to prepare him and create some predictability. And once we started this work to better understand neurodivergent needs and just understand neurodiversity as a whole, we started hearing a lot of similar stories, that events are hard, social gatherings are hard. Neurodivergent people aren't fragile. It's the design of our events and the rigidity of the way we're setting up these environments that are brittle and fragile. So we need to break that system. People are never wrong. Nothing about them is broken. The way we design around them can be. So we decided they deserve better and we can absolutely do better. So let's learn, let's listen. And that's how the new project was born. Next slide. So the new project is a love letter to neurodivergent people that was born out of XI. And it is education and enablement specifically written through the lens, through the discipline of event professionals and leaders. And it really has, in this first phase, 3 missions in mind: to demystify and normalize neurodiversity in our industry, to inspire event professionals to embrace new methods of inclusion, and then to tactically empower us to do something with this knowledge, right? To help us be more considerate and inclusive of all brains and neurotypes. Next slide. So we have an incredible, I mean, this started with 4 of us, right, in the XI community. And this network has grown to be over more than 100 event leaders, hospitality partners, incredibly amazing activists, influencers, and storytellers within the neurodivergent community have all informed and shaped this work. So these are some of our partners here. We're looking ahead to 2023 now and what products and services we want to deliver to event professionals next year. We're talking about a web series. We're talking about a grant program to get more neurodivergent speakers into events and into organizations to do cultural sensitivity training and just educate people on why this is important. So lots more coming from the new project. But yeah, it has been such a journey. Next slide. But the new project, the whole reason that we exist is so that no one has to go it alone. When we got the diagnosis with Otis, it was very lonely for our family. And now I have this whole community of over 100 people that are helping me advocate for my son. And we are extending that to absolutely anyone in this industry that wants to do this work professionally or personally. Next slide. And I really believe, and I say this a lot, that we are the industry, we are the people that should be championing belonging, inclusion, kindness, love, and leading all others in that work. We're bringing people together. We know people, right? You don't get into this industry, you don't get into event planning unless you love people. And so I really believe that we should be pioneering here and that we absolutely can. Next slide. So with that, I would love to open it up to questions. I am a super transparent open book, so I am happy to answer anything that you have for me.
I love this. Thank you so much for sharing this and for sharing your story and for all the work that you guys have been doing on this. We're so excited to have the light shined on this for a few minutes at Techsy Talk. If you guys have questions, please do put them in the chat. I see one already, which I want to get to. But first, inspirational, pioneering kindness and love in the events industry. I love that both Naomi and you use the word love. And, you know, Phil talked earlier about this idea of doing for one what you'd like to do for everyone and treating each attendee. It gives me the chills just thinking about this kind of work and really what our work does, the meaning of putting together an event and how that all works. So if you have questions, put them in the chat wherever you're watching. I did see one person who asks, and I think this is a really good question we probably should have announced in the beginning. What does neurodiverse mean when you say that? Kind of what is the term? I know we talked about it on one of our podcasts too. Like, what would you say is the definition of that?
So neurodiversity is all of us. It's every brain. And neurodiversity is comprised of neurotypical brains, so those that function typically, and neurodivergent brains, which is defined as differing in mental or neurological function from what is considered typical. So common types of neurodivergence are ADHD, autism, dyslexia, OCD, Tourette syndrome. even lasting effects from traumatic brain injury. These are all forms of neurodivergence.
Love it. Thank you so much. So, and I think you used the word neurotypical when you and I were talking about this topic before the event. So, is that how you see it? That you would use both terms?
Yeah. So, I'm neurotypical because I don't have any sort of neurodivergence. So, yeah, anyone who is typical functioning neurologically is neurotypical. Anyone who is atypical, I don't love that word, but would be neurodivergent. And it's really interesting because you don't have to have a formal diagnosis, so the 20% number, which I think is really important to call out, is very conservative. Diagnosis is a privilege. In many places, wait lists are years long. It's cost prohibitive. I had to take days off work to get Otis formally evaluated for our diagnosis. So not every family can do that. Not every individual can do that. So 20% is a very conservative estimate. Some studies say up to 30 or 40% of the population is neurodivergent because we're underdiagnosed. So it's important to flag that just because someone doesn't have a formal diagnosis doesn't mean that they're not neurodivergent. And a lot more people are self-identifying or self-diagnosing now. And we have to honor and respect that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think even some of these things, I have friends who are just now kind of going down the ADHD path, for example, or even the autism path where they're starting to say, like, I do feel like I've always felt like my brain works a little bit differently. And now, there's these terms that maybe their parents weren't aware of, or they just weren't aware of it. And so I could see why those numbers are clearly estimates. When you look at the future, like if you look at this project 5+ years down the road, what do you think some of the big changes in the events industry should be to make our events more inclusive and to really help everyone achieve that sense of belonging?
Yeah, this is such a great question. I mean, I think Naomi hit on a lot of it, right? And the belonging work is some of the most magical work I've done in my career. Like, I think someone cried on every one of those focus groups just because they were over, like, even talking about it makes people feel better. It makes people feel emotional, right? Like even opening the door for those conversations. I mean, I see a future of our industry that has dedicated audience advocacy teams that are diverse and can represent each faction of the human condition and that are totally focused on the outcomes of the audience rather than us only white knuckling our outcomes as designers or organizations. I really dream of that becoming a reality. We're actually playing around with that with XI for some of the events that we're planning. I think that these types of roles, like DE&I, be really focused on accurate representation, leaning into lived experiences. Like these are the roles of the future of our industry, and I think they're the roles that are going to attract the next generation of our industry and the talent. Right? Like these are the things that are really resonating with Gen Z. They want purpose. And they want to anchor to work that feels good and is creating change in the world. So those are changes I would love to see.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is very forward thinking, but very timely to your point. And we talked about this in the welcome too. The pandemic has changed people's expectations of what they want, what is, gets the check of something that they'd like to participate in or not. And I think that's going to continue to evolve. So thank you for all this work. Someone, Chloe would like to know, is there a way to get involved in the Google XI community? Where can we find more? Because I am getting a few, like, where's the link? What are we looking for?
So we don't have an externally facing website right now. As you can imagine, it has been quite a journey with legal and privacy at Google to make that happen. But we are currently in the process of final copywriting and design for a report that will be coming out of our community, basically recapping everything that we played around with in 2022 and all of our key learnings. When we formed the XI community, it was definitely for our benefit. But as we started to dig into the work and we really started to fall in love with this community, we felt strongly that we had to share it out. So everything that we learn will also be available to all of you. So follow on LinkedIn. Find me, find Naomi, because I'm sure she's very heavily involved in all of this work.
Yeah.
And we'll be sharing that out probably very, very early next year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for sharing this. I hope more people continue to stay in the loop And if you have ever anything public or resources that you want to share, send them over my way. I'll pass them out to the Techsy Talk community. Make
I
sure
absolutely will.
everyone
You're on the
gets it.
distribution list.
I get
So,
your stuff.
yeah,
but I wanna make sure
absolutely.
everyone else gets it too.
Yeah, and if I can ever be, if there's anybody on this call right now who has someone in their life who's neurodivergent, and you ever need a resource or support, or if you are and want to share your story and be a part of the new project, like please reach out. We welcome you, we embrace you, and I would love to be a support or resource to anyone.
I think your inbox is going to be slammed. So thanks for
I
sharing.
love it.
All right. Thank you so much. What a great session. Love this inspiring work. Chloe says, thank you for sharing, Megan and Naomi. Really inspiring work. I love thinking about the work that we do from these kinds of lenses and really thinking about why these really detailed things matter a lot. So thank you. Maya says, super helpful. Hi, Maya. I haven't seen you in way too long. Marla says, thank you, Megan. Naomi would also be happy to share. So we are supposed to take a little break. Breaks with virtual events, always awkward. But I trust that if you have to go to the restroom or you need to do something, you've probably already done it. You can keep us on in the background. I'm actually going to skip the break and jump into our next session because we want to make sure we have enough time for it. I know our next speaker, John Chen, has some very special things for you, and I don't want you to miss any of that. So, John, let me see if I can bring you on, and I want to pass it over to you as we talk about another really important topic, psychological safety. Very interesting. I'm excited to learn more. Let's see here. Yeah.
Hey, Liz, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
Thank you so much. Tuning in from Seattle, Washington. Thank you, Liz. Having Techsy Talk here. So today, thank you, Dia, jonisthebomb.com. Thank you so much. One of the things we'd love to do too here, I love the last talk, and just everyone, the topic is this: 10 quick tips to make your attendees feel comfortable. So, one, if we're not going to take a break, let's just do this. All of you here and all of you who are listening, thank you all for everyone who's tuning in live. Just take a moment. Ready? And inhale. And exhale. And just glad that you're here with us. And do us a favor here too, because I've already seen some of the people here chatting, which is chat something that you do to make your attendees feel comfortable on a virtual meeting. So we love to see the chat blow up a little bit here. Speaking of which too, I'm actually going to give you a handout for this. Megan Powers played his own walk-on music. Thank you so much. And I'm going to give you the 10 tips here. And 10 quick tips, again, to make your attendees feel comfortable. There's a link there, so you can download that and follow along with me. And so with that, one of the top things is, I don't know if you've ever heard of Google. Thank you, Google, for being here just a second ago, too. And I didn't know about that project. Is that Google did an amazing amount of research for a project called Aristotle. That's right, Aristotle. And it was around team building, which is why I'm interested. That's what I do, is that I spend most of my time doing team building. And they looked for the top factors for teams that were the highest performing teams. And they're radically different teams. Sometimes those teams are like to the schedule. They make all their milestones and they ship on time. And then there's the other teams, which are a little bit crazy, a little wild, look like they're going to crash into a wall. And at the end, they produce a miracle at the end. And so out of that, they came all this research and they said, what do they have in common? Is it the manager, the composition of the team, the equipment we give them, the place that we put them? And it turned out to be none of those things. The 5 things that they came up with this were impact, meaning, structure and clarity, dependability, and of course, psychological safety. And I found this fascinating in terms of team building, that psychological safety was the number one thing that would be the indicator of a high performing team. And then as I spent my last 2 years in pandemic on virtual, I really felt this was one of the secrets to things such as people participating, such as hitting the chat. Thank you, Roxanne. Aloha to you too. Sharon says, I welcome them by name. Look, so some of you already have my tips, which I'm excited about. And it's it's the psychological safety where team members feel safe to take risks and be vulnerable in front of each other. This is what allowed people to chat, sometimes unmute, and sometimes actually turn their cameras on. What a miracle. Speaking of turning their cameras on, let's hang out with our good friend Dia. Hey Dia, how are you?
Hey, can you hear me all right?
Oh, beautiful as always.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you. John, you are the rock star.
Well, thank you, Dia. Dia, and also got me onto invited me to a meeting yesterday. She couldn't even attend because, by the way, she was working the polls. If you haven't voted, well, it's too late, but you should have voted. All right. So, but Dia was working the polls yesterday. Dia, tell us what you know, or you have any great examples. How do you build psychological safety in your virtual meetings?
It is important, as you pointed out. It has to do, and I love everything that's already been said. Naomi, we have to connect, and we will. And belonging, I've got a book coming out about belonging because it is basic to our human needs to feel like we belong. And if we don't feel like we're connected and we belong to people, then we're not able to be vulnerable. So you have to make that connection. And everybody in here or everybody listening, I'm sure has heard, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Well, it is absolutely truth. People want to know that you care about them. So one quick conversation tip, when you're meeting someone or talking with someone, oh, wait, listen. And I love this idea that I discovered, and you may already know this as well, but it never hurts to remember. If you take the letters of listen and rearrange these same letters, it spells silent. So as you're listening, you're not thinking about what you're going to say next. You're not living in the past or the future. You're being present. And when you can listen intently to someone, you can connect with them. And then you can share content with someone. They feel comfortable because they feel safe. You've given them a safe environment. And you can do that online as well. If you want to have the audience interact in the chat, start with simple questions and then note if they put a comment in the chat. Back to you, John. I hope I haven't said too much or talked too long.
Thank you, Dia. I was just seeing if I could change the headphones, and now my headphones are not cooperating. But anyways, it sounds perfect. Thank you so much, Dia, too. And I think what you really came about here, too, is that I'm going to again share 10 tips here. And the 10 tips are in this beautiful acronym called Captain Win, right? Captain Win. Every letter stands for something. And the first one here that you got to do in the pre-show was connection before content. Peter Block said this amazing quote, and he said, without relatedness, no work can occur. Dia, can you just share the story that just happened in the green room here on
Oh, I made a comment in the green room in the chat, and Naomi said, oh, wait, let's connect. And because I made a comment about her content and I related to it. So now we're going to connect because we found a common ground.
And speaking of connect, by the way, Phil Marison said, good to see you, Dia.
Hey, Phil.
Excellent. Thank you, Dia. You know, the next one that we have here too is that the connection before content. Easy tips for you is in a virtual meeting is either start your meeting early and allow to have time for those who come in early to have time to connect with each other. No agenda, right? Can talk about all the non-work related things. Or if your schedule's busy, start your meeting, but allocate the first 3 to 5 minutes. And instead of saying things like, Dia, let's just wait a minute for all those other people to log on. Because what does that tell all the other people who are early?
Why am I here?
Why am I here? Yeah. So reward the people who are early and to say, let's talk about, reconnect in the first 3 to 5 minutes, and we'll get going.
So what I do, I'm a sergeant at arms with Toastmasters, the group that you went to that I didn't get to go to. I open the meeting early. I've got music playing, and I say, tell me who has something good to say. What happened good today? What happened good this week? Share with us, and then we can all celebrate. So you start off your meeting with, tell me something good. It sets the tone, and it gives people a feeling of inclusion in the conversation if they hear other people and they get to celebrate with other people, which gives them part feeling of celebration as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Dia. Dia gets to stay out here for just a few more minutes, which we get into the A. The A in Captain Win is for air traffic control. So when you get all your friends in here, like I got my good friend Joe Welch, the Will Fairy is here. Hey, Joe, how's it going? She's checking mic here
It
too.
is fantastic. Welcome and good morning, afternoon, evening to everybody around. My name is Joe Welch. Nice to meet you all.
Perfect. And my other friend is here, Josh. Josh is here too. Hey, Josh. Mr. Josh Javelberg is here.
Hello.
And Josh is expert in gamification. Got his one of those PhD things going on, so forth and so on. So, Josh, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Just you know, still recapping your conference. So it was that was one of the main things I've been working on lately.
We are crushing some analytics on my conference, the Engaging Virtual Meetings Conference 3.0.
Good stats. Good stats.
So yeah, so what I'm showing here is an example of air traffic control. You can have multiple people on instead of all of us talking at the same time. As the host of the meeting, one of the goals is that you'll find that your meeting will go better, faster, probably do more things if you just have somebody here help with air traffic control, which is who's going to go next. So by the host of the meeting is to really help and direct that. Although I gave this great example yesterday, you know, like if I'm the host and I just stop talking and I give no direction,
then someone else might chime in.
Only if you have great hosts like that. But otherwise, the meeting is really awkward when you really don't know where to go next. And so simple things too that help on virtual is also when you're done is to, you know, give a cue back to the host to let you know when you're done, because not everybody is clear about it. So things like, okay, and back to you, John. So small things like that are air traffic control. Although I do have to admit, I have a new goal. And a new goal is to actually lose control of the meeting and have everyone talk at the same time.
Like right now on top of you as you're trying to talk.
You mean just like start talking because I have something important to say?
Really not
and
that
so,
direct at all.
I mean, you know, to really identify
we
that
have to keep going like this. It's really okay.
And so the reason why I want that is because then I actually know the psychological safety of the meeting is so safe. Everybody feels like they feel okay to talk at the same time. And it also means that I have a topic that has a lot of energy around it. So it is a goal. And sometimes I'll let it go on and most people will resolve it themselves. But that is one of my other side goals. Excellent. So speaking of which, you know, participation. So now Joe is actually skilled in a bunch of other things. Not only she is an advocate for the Will Fairy, she authored a book, but she is also an American Sign Language interpreter. So Joe, if you mind, for our friends who are who might recognize American Sign Language, could you just do something like say hello to them? Excellent. Thank you so much, Joe. And this is another way to find other ways to participate that makes the meeting feel comfortable. Again, we just talked with neurodivergent crowds. You know, you need to think about inside your virtual meetings. Do you have additional needs? And is there a way you can feel those people feel comfortable so they're not struggling to participate? You know, how can they participate with that? Thank you so much, Joe, with that. You know, the other part here too is that the other tip that I have, oh, sorry, Joe, do you have something you want to add?
Well, quickly, you know, I know there's a lot of savvy people on this call, but something as simple as captions goes a long way. I know that the Zoom platform offers them, as long as you know that people can access that. It's not the ideal way, it's not the only way, but it definitely is a great way to move forward and allow people to feel included. I would also say that, you know, sometimes we want that energy and hype, but not everybody processes that way. So even just making sure that there's some good turn taking. And so those are just two quick tips to think about our audience and making sure that they are welcome. The last one would be put a statement in your registration and know about someone's needs well at the beginning of the process. That already is going to cut down on a lot of the confusion and frustration that happens down the way.
Two great examples. One is happening today, Zoomtopia, as well as Envision, run by Microsoft, is a program that has buttons where you can actually get American Sign Language. Zoom recently did add a feature now to add it natively, where American Sign Language is a resizable window. So I think it gives a lot more options. In addition to that, the program was interpreted language-wise as well as captioned into over 14 languages. And so those are other things. I've worked actually on an 8-language Zoom today. I've worked on an 8-language Zoom virtual meeting, and that's another way to get and grow the audience that you can participate. You know, Josh is crafty though. Josh is one of my most craftiest friends. Josh, do you know who MacGyver is?
Absolutely. It's kind of how I have to operate most of the time.
So you're running gamification with organizations sometimes who don't have enormous budgets or massive resources.
Sometimes.
So one of the ways to make people, one of the ways to help virtual attendees feel comfortable is to just be a host so that you always know there is a way. So, I mean, even us after 2 years, sometimes our mics don't work, sometimes our, the speakers don't work, whatever can happen, but that there's always a way. So Josh, I don't know if you have some crafty things that you've done in the past year or two and trying to help, attendees or yourself participate in a meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm constantly looking at tools and things to come up. I mean, trying to get participation in general and increase engagement.
Oh, wait, to increase engagement, I took you off stage. Sorry, go ahead.
So we developed apps that are like just using AppSheet or some other things to kind of get people engaged in different ways and into thinking about the other spaces. I mean, just for your event, we looked at how the engagement took place, but we just used the chat logs and Excel, trying to clean up some data and deal with things like that. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can. I mean, it depends on what the problem is. You can always find something that's free or easy to solve it. I mean, and even just doing this presentation, I mean, you explained some great software like OBS to extend your reach and what you're doing and make it more engaging, which was also free and easy to use. And coming up with a presentation, it might be a mix of a whole bunch of different little apps to make it work the way you want it to. So it's just a matter of like thinking ahead of time, figuring out what Swiss Army knife you have available, and then kind of putting it all together.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Josh. One of the other things that comes in here, having that MacGyver attitude is a way to make people feel comfortable. The next way is this. It sounds simple, but it's acknowledgement. And I'd love to bring up Liz here. Liz, I just want to say hi, and I want to say thank you. I know that you've been running techsytalk for years. You and I have been friends in the meetings industry, and that you've really also contributed heavily in the virtual space. I just want to say thank you. All right, and thank you again for this opportunity. Acknowledgement is such a simple gesture that can have such a powerful result. And what I always say is that, if you acknowledge the people doing things that you want them to do, such as participate, that you'll get more of it. Liz, do you have anything that you want to add? Like how has acknowledgement been a win for you at techsytalk?
I mean, I think it's so important. And first of all, thank you for all that you have done for virtual meetings and for participating today. But I think it especially in a community, it's really important for people to feel like they're part of something and that people notice that they participate and that they're there. One of the phrases that I really like that I try to use frequently, meaningfully though, is I really appreciate you. Whether that's an event staff at an event or someone I'm exchanging emails with, very thankful and showing that gratitude, especially in this month, I think is very important. So I'm glad that you added that to your Captain Win.
Thank you so much, Liz. Let's bring up Joe and Josh. Feel free to give a quick thanks to Liz. Let's have Joe go first.
Liz, you're amazing. This is such a great space, and I want to just thank you for holding this space and making sure that we're continuing to stay on time and ahead of the game, making sure that everybody is included. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. How about you, Josh?
Yeah, again, thank you for engaging this space. I really, it's my first time in here, and it's I'm already learning a lot and engaging a lot with obviously being pulled up. So, but yes, this is wonderful, and keep up the good work.
Hope to see more of you.
Thanks again, Liz, and keep highlighting all those chats from our amazing people who are online. We appreciate that. Let me just check this. Oh, Megan, words of affirmation, my top love language. Okay, Joe or Josh, have you ever asked a question and got no reply? like all the time?
Not Josh, but I definitely have.
Joe, do you want to add? Do you want to go ahead? Let's ask the virtual audience a question, right? Let's ask them and see if they a question. But I would love to hear the question, like the way you asked it, and the way that you got no response. So go ahead if you don't mind.
Oh my gosh, on the fly. Well, I'll take it to the will fairy. So oftentimes I ask people if they have a current and updated will, and especially when people are not feeling. So if you don't mind putting in the chat just whether or not, I think this might actually get engagement here because the audience is so amazing. But at the time when people didn't want to contribute and they didn't want to, admit what was going on. So I will ask the question, do you have a current and updated will? Please say yes or no in the chat. Oh, some crickets.
Okay, we don't have any replies yet online, but there's also the delay. Liz says yes. Oh, that's good. Megan says no. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Side note is that one of my my mom, who passed away a few years ago, at her memorial, one of the leaders said, "Oh, your mom was a leader," and I'm like, "What? What is he talking about?" And he goes, "Because she actually had all her affairs taken care of, and it turns out that it's only 1 in 4." Less than 25%. Need to update.
That's 1 in 4 in majority culture. When you look at the disability community, people of color, marginalized communities, it goes down to 1 in 9, 1 in 10.
Well, Josh, you think of a question here too, because one of the things that I discovered over this past year is what I call the invitation. And the invitation says this: the way you ask your question either increases or decreases the odds of people answering it. And so here are some quick tips. Of course, create a question that people can answer, right? Not like, some theoretical something, another too hard. Then tell people specifically how to participate. In this case, it's easy. It's like Zoom chat, right? Or private chat here. But give choices too. So especially with your live audience, right? Raise your physical hand or your virtual hand, something that's going to help include everybody. And then just get comfortable with the silence. So Josh, using some of these tips, could you ask another question to this audience here, both live and in person? Right, we have a green room here too.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say, can you define gamification for me? And asking that would be just take forever for them to chat, and you're just going to sit there and wait. But if I ask something like, "Is engagement is a game? Does gamification have to be fun?" And then raise your hand if you think it is, or answer in the chat, and hopefully people can answer quickly. So gamification has to be fun.
Liz says yes. Excellent. Thank you so much, Josh and Joe. One of the key pieces here is that when you ask this question, I found this because I was working with facilitators for breakout rooms, and he was asking a question like this, right? So is this point important to you? Oh, no? Okay, great. Then we're just going to move on. And even though people were thinking about the answer, he cut them off, and then it just trains attendees to be lazy, and then they become uncomfortable, and then they didn't answer. We have a few others here that we just really want to share. The next one is the creation of what we call the no sorry zone, right? So if you've actually seen somebody come in here and say sorry a lot, we have something called the no sorry zone that we've created, and was invented in April of 2022. I'm sorry, April 2020, when we just got sick of people saying sorry about things they had no control over, their dogs, their children, the blower next door, the lawnmower. And so we created the no sorry zone, and what goal was to bring the level of anxiety down, right? Take a moment to remember April of 2020, right? And the anxiety was way up here. And just to come here, if we're going to do something productive on this meeting, is to get people to feel comfortable, bring that anxiety down, and bring the no sorry zone here. All right, the next one, of course, is welcoming. The W in Captain Win is welcoming. I have this great theory now, which is the first 5 minutes of your virtual meeting are the most important. Has anybody ever seen this? You go to log into a meeting, right? It's 1 minute to the meeting. It's a very important meeting. Maybe has a very important speaker, and you see this. This is my new death knell that I know that the meeting is going to be bad. And so the way that you welcome and think about how you host that first 5 minutes, whether it's welcoming, telling people hello when you come on, maybe music, maybe a slide oriented them to where they are. That is really important. The next key here is make your meetings impactful. Is there something that you can do? I hope each of you actually take a moment now, if you can hit the chat And if there's one tip or something that came here that either reinforces something you know or something new that you want to try, we would love to hear that. And the last tip that we have here is names. So with names, Chloe said, what I recently learned is that I changed my word to sorry to come off and be replaced with thank you, which helps you come from a stronger place as well. I think that's really key. One of the pieces here is that I want to close with this, is that if you apply these 10 things, is that, what this person said, it's not what you do, but it's how you feel. That's what I love the Techsy Talk community so much for, is that we concentrate on the experience for them. And so I'd love to say thank you to my guests here, Joe and Josh and Dia, who had to run. But I hope that you got at least one of these tips to help your people feel more comfortable in your next virtual meeting. Now, let's bring the one and only, here, wait, I have to say this for this as I bring on Liz. Here we go, Liz.
Thank you for attending the performance. And a special thanks to all those who helped with the show.
Now put your hands together for the one and only Liz Caruso.
You're so funny.
Thank you, Liz.
Now I want to go to Disney. I feel like I always hear those at Disney. John and Joe and Josh and Dia, thank you so much for joining and making, not only giving us great tips, but making your session itself, of course, engaging, because it's you, John Chen. You are the bomb, as they say. Thank you so much for your time today. I love some of those tips. I love the content that we covered today, really talking through some of those, I think, first things that you think about. These are strategic things that we've been talking about today. Psychological safety. How do you set up a feeling of belonging? How do you create the art of memorable experiences? All of these things matter, and they come way early in the planning process. We are also going to cover more about these things and others in the coming days. So thank you for joining today. And then again, for the next few days, tomorrow, we are going to hear first from Marianne Pierce, who is going to talk about the new event model for growth and monetization. We definitely know everyone wants to talk about the money, so we're going to fit that in tomorrow. Tahira, who has been with us today, is going to join us to talk about what is your intention. Really great, in line with what we've been talking about today. Erica Speed, she's with Forbes. She's going to be talking about creating authentic spaces of diversity. And I get to do one of my favorite sessions, a few of my favorite things tomorrow, where I talk about some of my favorite tech tools and tips. So don't miss that. And we'll come back to Naomi for the Wheel of Belonging. Friday, we get to hear from the fabulous Dalia Algazar, who's going to talk about, she refuses to use the word hybrid. So she's going to talk about blended events. And we also have our closing keynote, Jesse Cole, who is going to be talking about how to put your fans first or your attendees first. I know everyone's very hyped to hear him speak, myself included. Now, we do have today a few other kind of closeout notes. We do have the opportunity for you guys to jump into Zoom and network with each other, share some of the things that you've learned. If you have any questions that you want to bring up or things that you want to participate in, this is going to be like your standard Zoom where everyone's on video. You're welcome, obviously, to be on audio only in the chat, but it's all kind of happening in one room. And again, that's intentional for the experience, for those of you who want to be part of the whole community and participate in that. So you can jump on over to that as soon as we are no longer live here. The link, if you just want to click, which is obviously easier, is in an email, hopefully that you received earlier today, or we will put it in the chat on Facebook and LinkedIn. Please don't share this widely, just because we don't know who might join. So feel free, though, to click in and join us. We do have another Zoom link, which we'll share by email and in our Facebook and LinkedIn pages tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern. Again, that's the speed networking. So that'll be a different link for you to use. And then the stream will be pinned again in Circle and on Facebook and LinkedIn and all these great places, so that you don't miss the content that kicks off at noon tomorrow. Thank you all for joining. Let's see here. We have the Zoom link in the chat. I see it there. Thank you, Jennifer. LinkedIn user says, thank you for inspiring people. Thank you for participating and letting all of this come through. Let's see here. Lots of great tips. So feel free to look at the chats on these different platforms. The recordings will be available. And again, we will make them available in a variety of different formats. So you will see full video, audio only, transcripts, notes, all of that will be coming your way after these 3 days. So we'll make sure to get that to you as soon as possible. I think that is all for today. Lots more I want to share, but we will see you tomorrow. So I'll see you guys in the Zoom now, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. And thank you to Jennifer, who's been backstage helping produce and click all the buttons, and to all of our speakers today. What a great day. Perfect way to wrap up day one. Thanks, everyone.